everyone. Today's guest, we have Harold Londoño on the show, and he's going to be talking about how for over the last 3 years, he's been helping Latino family businesses build wealth the same way wealthy families here in the U.S. build their wealth. So he's been working with advisors for help over 100 families, and also being able to bridge that gap between the U.S. and Latin America to really teach them how to build the communities and also influence all the opportunities that they can have for wealth building and preservation. So please help me welcome Harold to the show.
Thank you so much, Christina, for having me.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you. We love what you're doing, and especially being from a Caribbean background, right? We have a lot of Latino, and my family being from Jamaica. So it's really great that you're really focusing on helping your community, right? And trying to bridge that gap between the U.S. and Latin America. So can you just elaborate on how you even got into this industry and started focusing on that?
Yeah. So the little 30-second backstory there is I got out of high school and started getting into college. Wasn't really for me, decided to drop out, and then soon after started my own dog care service.
Wow.
But mind you, the entire time from the age of 14, I knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial that was related to finance because of different movies that I had seen and different influences in my life. And so dropped out of college, I started this dog care service, still with this dream and thinking of ways that I can go about it. Started learning about pattern day trading. People probably remember the huge Forex movement that was happening around 2016.
Yeah.
And so I fortunately met some really good people that I started working with a little bit. That eventually kind of fell apart. And then I thought to myself, okay, I got to do something that is going to actually produce income. And so I started working as a asbestos handler for Local 78. I got into the union.
Wow.
Still running that dog care service, walking dogs, taking care of dogs, working construction. So had a lot on my plate, and it got busy really quick. But I didn't stop doing my best to educate myself. And so, because of a company called Jumping Jack Tax that some people might be familiar with, Donnell, I think Prince Donnell, as I know his Instagram title. I started following him a lot, and I resonated a lot with what he would speak about in terms of manhood, entrepreneurship, and eventually he came out with the NFT. And at the time I was super skeptical of NFTs, but the only thing that I cared about was that his actually had utility in terms of networking, in terms of being able to use the services and different things like that. So long story short, when I got one of his NFTs, it came with me being able to go to this networking event. I showed up to the networking event, my very first networking event ever. I'm 19 years old, and I'm standing online, I'm dressed all sharp, and I knew that it was pitched as a networking event that was going to be for entrepreneurs, investors, and small business owners. And so in my mind, being 19, 20 years old at the time, I'm thinking everyone in that room is going to be so much more experienced than me. And I started going, holy shit, I don't have an intention. And on the line waiting to go in, I just thought, okay, I need to go in and actually have an end objective with this networking event. It's my first one ever. And I said, I'm going to ask 2 questions. What made you become successful? And what mental obstacles did you have to overcome to get there? And that was the only thing I did. I walked into the networking event, I started asking everybody these questions, ended up meeting a guy that ended up becoming a lifestyle coach for me. We worked for about 3 months. He helped me just look at different aspects of my life, but it got to a point where he said, you got to start thinking about how you're going to transition to construction. What kind of career do you want to go down? He connected me with somebody that has been a financial advisor for about, I'd say 15 years now. That person is now my director, and that's kind of like the overarching. I eventually just transitioned straight into financial advisory after being the director and kind of going down that path. So
wow, so it was kind of instant, and not just by luck, right? But a lot of people go to networking events and they're just like, oh, I'm here to learn, and I'm just here just to kind of see where they fit. And your first one, you're like, okay, I'm going to really be intentional about it. I'm going to ask 2 really important questions because I really don't know anyone that does that. And then by you doing that, that led to an instant, you finding what your purpose is, what your role is. So that's pretty amazing. So once you kind of got into that financial aspect, what were some of the things, how did you now really make that your focus to now help Latino businesses?
So it's a really saturated industry, being a financial advisor. I started off in the insurance space, and so when you're going in, and first off, didn't come from a financially educated background. Parents are Colombian immigrants, and the more when I was working in construction, the majority of my coworkers were either Colombian, Mexican, Ecuadorian, Central American, all at once. And I just kept on seeing more of my people, but also having these conversations with people twice or three times my age. And it was kind of always the same conversation, financial difficulty, scarcity, and for good reasons, I'm sure. But I got into my now career kind of carrying that and thinking like, how do I help that? But at the same time, how do I overcome the fact that my culture is also super skeptical of anybody that's trying to help them. Is not really open to new ideas or is just kind of working on surviving. And so I really had to start thinking like, how do I start setting myself apart? And I realized, well, you have to look at what is the biggest amount of influence. How can I make the biggest amount of impact in the shortest amount of time in a way that's really effective? And it's by working with other people that can make that impact. So I was thinking small and thinking, okay, I want to work with people that were my coworkers at the time. I realized, wait, no, those people have bosses. And I remembered a lot of those owners of the contracting companies were also Latino. And then I started really looking at my community and going, wait, a lot of Latinos are actually general contractors, subcontractors, restaurant owners. Maybe they own like rental car services or a warehouse, but point is they're in business. And so I started looking up statistics around it, and I realized, wait, Latino business owners are actually Latinos are very entrepreneurial. But they lack the structure that I've learned wealthy families have and how they approach building wealth. So Latinos have hustle, they just don't have structure, and they don't know how to leverage the systems that are already in place here in the United States, the tax systems, the financial systems, capital systems, how to build a business and retain employees and look at their business in something as simple as your business can also have equity, just like a piece of real estate can have equity. But the difference is the business has to have certain systems and people in place so that it can be seen as a self-operating asset. And realize, how do I help Latino family businesses realize that and start working towards that and building themselves in that way?
That is so important. I think I agree, right? We come from like that background where they have like so much hustle, right? They have hustle drive, they have really good work ethic, but then how do we systemize that and kind of like help them become more of just the owner and not the operator and the person taking the money, doing the work and everything else. So that's good. So what kind of like systems and strategies are you kind of really helping them implement?
So first, I think it would be, let's look at it in terms of frameworks, because I think the biggest thing that I've learned whenever I've been speaking to people in my community is that because we do not come from, our culture is not synonymous with financial education. It can't be broken down in like super detailed like tactics, and I can't even use the same terminology. So what I found was, even for myself, frameworks is what really helps me. When I'm able to break things down into simple concepts, then when I start diving into deeper details, it starts making a lot more sense. And so I'd say the first framework that is helpful for any community or any business owner that doesn't generally come from a background where finance and business is spoken about, it's defining where they fall and what kind of business owner they are in the first place. Easy one is the Robert Kiyosaki 4 quadrants. But really digesting and reflecting on what that means, because you go from employed to self-employed to business owner. We're not going to talk about investor, but self-employed to business owner. A lot of people in the Latino community, I'm sure many people watching this can also relate, because it's not just Latino community, own an LLC, but they're still an employee. They don't actually run a business. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you have to start somewhere and you have to build up towards having a self-operating business. But understanding where you fall in that, and once you understand, okay, I'm self-employed now, I'm still an employee, I just work for myself, you also start to realize, okay, what do I have to do to kind of come out of that mold? And that's when you start becoming a business owner, because you have to put on that business owner hat off hours. You're an employee from 9 to 5 for your business when you're doing the service. Outside of those hours, you got to sit down and think, how can I have made that process better? How can I delegate some of these tasks? How can I make some of this more efficient? What resources do I need to make this easier for myself? What partnerships do I need so that this can bring in more opportunity? The business owner is the one that does that. And that's how someone starts moving over into becoming a business owner.
Right.
Other framework that I'd say I'd share, and this is just overarching for a family that is building wealth, is understand that there's three main drivers of wealth: financial assets, real estate, and business ownership. They get to choose one, or they can combine them, but the wealth strategy needs to come first. And I also learned this from Robert Kiyosaki's CPA.
Right.
He wrote the book Tax-Free Wealth, and he wrote, wealth strategy comes first, so choose which one is going to be your main focus. Tax strategy is what gets revolved around that. And there's so many more that I can share. But
I do want to touch on that, because you're also, you're definitely helping Latino businesses, and their business is one thing, but then also the wealth planning is different, right? So what kind of like things are you doing to help them at least plan for their wealth building, even preservation past, their lifetime?
Yeah. I'd say first is the moment you start looking at your business as another asset that's a part of a portfolio, it all becomes a wealth strategy.
Okay.
Same thing with real estate. If you're speaking to a real estate investor, the real estate is how they're either generating income or how they're building net worth. There's going to be other pieces attached to that too.
Yeah.
They're going to need specific kind of reserve accounts, and the kind of financial vehicle that you use to store that is going to be important.
Yeah.
They're going to maybe diversify in different vehicles to offset on different cycles in the economy, because they go, I want to put all my eggs in this basket.
Yeah.
Hey, I also want to take advantage of other financial vehicles that are invested in equities, but also give me tax benefits to offset real estate ones, right? So again, once they realize that whatever path they've chosen, business, real estate, or financial asset, and you see them all as just an individual type of asset that has its own rules to that game, then it all becomes part of their wealth strategy. So that's one. Two, I'm going to share two more things. Second one is understanding what it is that they want their money to do for them. There's a really cool saying that I learned from an advisor with about 30 years of experience working with family businesses, and he said, I need to know what you want your money to do for you before I can tell you what to do with your money.
Yeah, right? That's really,
Second thing he says is, there's a movie in your mind. And this is what he'll tell us. He says, there's a movie in your mind. My job as an advisor is to take a look at the script and align that with reality. I don't want that movie to come to life, but we got to align it with what's going on in reality.
Yeah.
So knowing exactly what you're trying to have your money do for you, and having very specific targets, even net worth targets. And there's very specific ways to calculate net worth targets where simple equation, because I want to share something practical before I move on to the third aspect that I think is important, is think about what is that number that you want to pay yourself in passive income a month. Yeah. Multiply by 12. Now that's your passive income for a year. And then multiply that by 25. Why? Because that number that you get at the end of that is, if you take that whole number and you put it into, let's say, just a treasury that right now is growing at 4%, that 4% return that you're getting is going to give you what you're trying to make in passive income. Your principal, or the initial money, doesn't get touched, right? Why is that important? Because your entire portfolio represents your net worth. Your net worth is the entire capital that you're working with to compound your wealth. That interest that compounds is generally going to be part income that you pay yourself, part capital that goes back into continuing to grow that net worth, right? So when you have very specific targets like that, rather than thinking, I got to make $100 million.
Right.
You go, most people that I've sat down with, in spite of running successful businesses, are looking for $40,000 to $50,000 of monthly passive income. You multiply that within that equation, and you realize, I need X amount. And so now you have a target to work towards. When you reach it, that's another conversation. But once you reach it, that's your new standard. Maybe you can go further, or you haven't hit that target at the time that you wanted, and then you reassess. And then the last thing, and I think it's kind of evident in the way that I talk about it, is there's employees inside your business, there's employees outside your business. The employees inside of your, and to business owners, like, these are all your employees. The employees inside of your business are the ones that are operating the business. The employees outside of your business are your wealth advisor, your tax advisor, your attorney, your banking relationship. Those are all employees of your business. You do not work for them; they work for you.
Yeah.
Their job is to work together in helping you look at the bigger picture of your business and see how you can how you can continue to grow your business or your wealth if you're a real estate investor, right? I call that a virtual family office, but
that's going to be a whole nother topic, the family offices. But it's good that you point that out, because I think a lot of people are in the business aspect, right? They're just kind of only thinking about who's going to internally run their business, but not those external factors that's going to keep their business going, right? They're only thinking about the day to day and not, okay, how can I talk to my planner and how can I talk to my accountant, my tax advisor, to kind of like all those things are really important for that. So I do want to touch on, because you know, pretty much like growing your wealth so that you have that number with that formula. But what does that look like for like people that are not, maybe, you know, their risk tolerance isn't as great? So how are you like helping them diversify to still get that number, but a little more conservatively, I would say?
Yeah. I think a better way to pose that, right, is where does somebody start that hasn't actually started a business or hasn't seen progress, right?
Yeah.
And I would say it's one, there's a framework that I use that you've seen me present before. It's the 4 levels of wealth. The 4 levels of anybody building wealth is, first, it's maximizing cash flow. Second, it's accumulating assets. Third is organizing those assets through an estate plan. And fourth is distributing that wealth, whether it's to yourself when you retire, so passive income, or distributing it to the next generation. So if you are not at a place yet where you have started a business or you have started investing in real estate or you even have financial assets, which, by the way, if you have a retirement account with your job, you have a financial asset. And that's something that you can start to analyze how to properly manage, how to maximize, sitting down with an advisor or doing your own research, right? But first of all is cash flow maximization. And so one of the things that I realized when I was really spending, you know, I must have spent like over 1,500 hours, like no joke, writing out all the pain points, like every single little minute little thing that I felt like a Latino employee would struggle with in terms of financial planning and projecting that vision. One of the things I realized is they don't know how to actually start managing their own income. Like, so we can't even think about assets yet. Like, how do you manage your income? And I don't just mean budgeting, because there are 3 ways that you can maximize your cash flow. You can budget, so control your expenses so that they're lower than your income. That's an obvious one. It is doing proper tax planning. So depending on the kind of job that you have and how you file, you can obviously reduce your tax bill. That's freeing up more income for you to set to the side. And then last is actually protecting that income. So and by the way, huge thing for people to keep in mind, your first asset is your income. You are your first asset. So if you cannot produce income, you cannot continue to funnel capital into any asset. And even when you're building asset, it's the same exact thing. So some kind of workers' comp, some kind of disability insurance, life insurance, these are all things that are protecting that income until you maximize cash flow. Last one, which is a bit of a bonus here, it's producing more cash flow. The reality is, and this is something that I had to, this is a breakthrough that I had on a personal level when I stopped trying to appease everyone that I was sitting in front of. And I realized some people, if you're an employee, you have a fixed amount of income, so you only have 2 options. Find a better job that pays you more money, negotiate your salary so that you can ask for more money, get paid more money, or start working on a side hustle so you can bring more income. Because you can only get assets if you have income. So you have to find a way to produce income. Once you got that level nice and clear, then that's when you can start moving into accumulating assets and thinking, okay, do I want to focus on financial assets, business ownership, or real estate?
Interesting. I love that you pointed that out, because, you know, we did start off that you're helping Latino business owners, but it's not just business owners, like you said, right? There's ways that even if you have a W-2 job, you may seem like, oh, I don't have a business, I don't have that. That doesn't mean that you can't start building wealth or look at different avenues without picking up a side hustle, right? So can you kind of share like some of that, or maybe even a client that you have that is still an employee that is you're helping with that wealth preservation and building?
So I met a software engineer last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's in his mid-40s. He's got 2 kids, married, but owns six investment properties.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one that's his own personal property, and then he also just started lending to other real estate investors. And
Nice.
I believe last year it was his first year doing it, and if he didn't make 6 figures, I believe he made a little under 6 figures. But the guy's on track to retire early over the next 8 years. That's his goal. And so someone like him, you know, the goal of somebody that's trying to transition from W-2 into full-time entrepreneurship, the way that their plan looks is going to be very different. I call it an accumulator versus an accelerator. An accumulator is saving and investing so that they can create passive income in the future at whatever age they feel like is their retirement age. Some people say 55, some people say 60, right?
Yeah.
An accelerator is somebody that's trying to save and invest so that they can start generating passive income or at least working for themselves as quickly as possible.
Okay.
So, for some people, and none of this is financial advice, nothing that I'm saying
real
is
life advice. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you got to look at your own situation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're set on this vision of I'm not going to work this W-2 for the rest of my life, and by the next 5 years I need to make sure I'm out of here, then let's think about this logically. If I were working construction still, and I were, let's say, 30 years old, and I knew that I was going to leave in the next 5 years, and in the next 5 years I'm going to need some of my capital to put into real estate, to put into my business, I personally wouldn't lock it away inside of a financial vehicle that's going to have it locked away in some 59.5. At least I wouldn't be putting anything over what I'm getting from my employer, because that's just free money. So that makes sense, right? Now, is there ways to liquidate those accounts? Absolutely, but there's huge trade-offs for it. So if I were in that position, I would say, okay, what other vehicles can I use to still put my money to work, to still create opportunity for myself, while still creating the flexibility that I'm going to need for my unique life choices, which isn't continuing to work this W-2. Which, last thought here is, every W-2, every person that works a W-2 should be looking at their financial plan independent from their company. Your job is not assured. Your retirement plans are not assured. You may not even be sure that you're going to stick with. You might stay in the same field, but you might bounce to another company in like 2-3 years because they're going to give you a better salary. So looking at your plan in a way that allows for that kind of flexibility is so important, whether you're a W-2 or whether you're a full-time entrepreneur.
Wow, I think that's a really good point too, because I think many people in the W-2 world look at their whatever, if it's Vanguard or whatever their investment account or their 401k as their financial plan. Like, okay, this is what's there. They're not really doing anything outside of that. So it's really good that you point that out to kind of look at. And I know, at least when you enter the W-2 world, the first thing I tell you is max out your 401k, max out your retirement, max out all these things. And then you're kind of saying like, no, put like the bare minimum, or at least put whatever the company is matching. So as somebody, like, let's say someone's coming into the W-2 world and they're like kind of fresh off that and they're hearing that advice, what would you kind of tell them to do outside of that? Like with their personal financial plan, like what would that look like for them?
So first, I would tell them to sit down and think really hard about what it is that they want to do, what they want their money to do for them. Again, it goes back to that. I find that a lot of people think that financial planning is just a numbers exercise. Yeah. But that's really only 20% of the work. Really, it's you prioritizing what's important and what kind of impact you want that money to have in your life. Once you're really, and here's the reality, now I'm say this from personal experience of doing this for 3 years now. I've had conversations with hundreds of people now at this point. Some people don't even know what it is that they want in life. Like they don't even have a vision, and it's no. I mean, I don't want to take away people's accountability, but I just think that some people found themselves in a position in life one day where they just had to take care of certain things to take care of like their survival needs. but then they just got stuck there.
They got stuck, yeah.
And so the moment you can't sit down and think intentionally about what it is that you want your life to look like, no financial plan is going to help you.
No,
because you're going to just build what I realized. I learned something. I was at a family office event at the end of November of last year, and there was 3 panelists. And by the way, for anyone that doesn't know, a family office is this kind of business model where wealthy families, instead of having a tax advisor here, a wealth advisor here, a banking relationship here, they have them all under one roof. Kind of like, think about having all your doctors and specialists inside of one building. They do the same exact thing with finance, business, legal. It's a family office. So I was at this event and they had 3 panelists speaking. One of them was the CEO of 1-800-Flowers.
Okay.
Right? Which I found that he's an Irish guy from Queens, which is cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
There was another gentleman that I don't remember his name. And honestly, I think he just managed a fund. That's really what I remember most from him. But the other guy stood out to me because he was 7th generation of a Finnish family or a Swiss family that owned a portfolio of the oldest companies in his country. And when I tell you old, I mean like companies from like the 1600s.
Oh my goodness.
Brands, right? It was crazy.
But
one of them shared something. He said, we want to focus on helping our family build a ship, not a fortress.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I realized a lot of people that don't have a vision for their lives are building fortresses around themselves because, and for the Latino community, what does that look like? I'm going to work until I have to, and I'm going to live off Social Security, and I'm going to go back to the country that I was trying to leave from initially because my money won't last me here. Like that's you're building a fortress because you now, I mean, you're going to have a lot more opportunity with that capital in your home country, but the reality is it's not by choice. Like it just happened to you. Yeah. And you'd be surprised. That's the same thing with business owners. There's business owners that their businesses only produce income. The business doesn't have any actual value. So because of that, they can't wait for the day to get rid of that responsibility. And then same exact thing, maybe buy a house here and then bounce back to the home country because that's what, I mean, I literally have a client who did that recently.
Really?
He owned a business for quite a long time, but it just makes more sense for him to go back to his country. I don't want to.
Wow. Yeah. But no, I love that you said that because I think a lot of people are in survival mode. They're like, we're just trying to get by, make enough money to pay our bills, right? Maybe we'll hit vacation here and there. And that's the life, right? And that's kind of like survival mode and like tapping out to break out of that. So I love that you said that. And also just going back to like having a purpose and a vision because a lot of people get a good job, right? Like, oh, make sure you get a good job, but like, you like that job? Are you really being purposeful? Are you fulfilling your potential? And that's also why I started the community about real estate. It's like, it's not just real estate done right, but it's also about, is this your purpose? Like, do you actually enjoy this? Is this what you want to do? Are you impacting your life and other people? Or are you just doing it because it pays well and it sounds good, right? So I think that's important that you mentioned like having a vision because how can you help someone if you don't know where they want to go? So what does that look like? Are you like actively like helping people like, figure out their plan, figure out their vision also? No, because me helping somebody come up with it, like to me, that is the person I'm talking to his job. Now, don't get me wrong, when I run across somebody that I can tell that there's a clear vision for themselves, I do feel like it's my responsibility to share some inspiration and like talk to the part of them that is keeping them from having faith in even creating a vision in the first place. And I will tell them a bit about my background and I'll tell them about people that I've met that are similar to them. But they have to sit down and work on that vision because the reality is the vision is the first step. And I have also met people, especially a lot of networking events that have visions and that's it. Yeah. So having just a vision is just like having motivation but no discipline. So once you have a vision, the next step is you got to go out and network and educate yourself. So what I do help people with is that if there is a clear vision and we're able to work on a plan for them on the wealth and business side, I'm also very passionate about human capital. There's financial capital and there's human capital. There's a book that I recommend anybody watching this. It's called Family Wealth by James E. Hughes Jr. How wealthy families preserve financial, human, and intellectual capital. That's where I learned about this concept. I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
So to me, human capital is people that can not teach me. It's just funny because I actually, this thought crossed my mind on my way here today. I was thinking to myself, nowadays with the availability of information, you should never be going to another person, like taking up somebody's time so that they can teach you something. Yeah. It should be so that they can refine what you already know.
Yeah.
Because the books, the podcasts, the videos are all there.
Everything, yeah.
So once you have your vision, use the resources that are available to educate. And those same people that you could be going in front of and speaking to, they created that concept because they realized, I can't be teaching people one-on-one. Yeah. So they teach.
They mass produce it. And yeah.
So once you go and you educate yourself and learn like the 101 language of like what you're trying to get into, whether it's business or specific business industry or real estate or specific type of real estate assets, then you take that and you go start investing in your human capital. Start networking with people that are integrated in that path that you're trying to go into. So let's just use real estate as an example. Start networking with lenders, start networking with attorneys, start networking with experienced investors in different specialties, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Once you start talking to these different people, you'll start to look at this one project that you're working on from different angles, but you're also creating connections with people that can help you solve those common pitfalls ahead of time. Yeah. And that's a whole separate type. Like that's a business plan now. Like the numbers, finance plan is one thing, and that's a part of a business. But now that human capital becomes a part of the business plan.
Yeah, that is so interesting because I think a lot of people focus on like capital, right? Then they think just finance and just money, but that is a whole. And I think that's priceless. You can't put a price tag on educating yourself, being intelligent, learning from different people without, like you said, without taking up their time. There's plenty of resources out there. We live in an era that if you want to know something, just Google it. Like there's Google at YouTube and it's free. It's free. It's not like you have to pay into this. So that's so important. I do want to kind of ask just like one last question, just about how you're kind of bridging that gap, like between Latin America and the US, like how they build wealth. Like, can you just kind of elaborate on that part?
Yeah. Thank you. Giving me a chance to speak on my.
Yes, exactly.
So, my long-term vision in life is that I believe that the Latino culture isn't synonymous with wealth as other ethnic cultures. Yeah. And I don't just want to elevate my community. I also want us to get to a point where, because we're known for being financially savvy and entrepreneurial and good business owners, we can do business with anybody in spite of culture, in spite of ethnicity. Because I believe that's how business should just be done with good people, no matter what background, no matter what struggles you went through. If you're good at business, let's do business. Exactly. But my way of going about that is that here, if I can work with 250 Latino family businesses and really helping them leverage and utilize the systems that are in place here in the U.S. to scale their businesses, as opposed to just sending money back home or building here, they can now bring capital and opportunity back home. Because that's
amazing. Yeah,
it's not something that hasn't already been done. It's literally what my parents have been doing. Our families come to this country, they work really hard, produce capital, and they send money back home. But all they're really doing is taking care of our family. They're not kind of like elevating
and teaching them how to build it.
It's a missed opportunity because to me, if the Latinos here that understand the culture of Latinos back home can start developing their capabilities and skill sets here along with capital, they can now take that experience back home and not just have capital to invest with, but experience and connections. And now what happens? Now we're creating communities within our own home country and creating such a big impact, in our country where Latinos are coming to the United States because they want to, not because they have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because they have to. So that's my big vision.
That is amazing. I love that. And I think especially like we're first generation, we have our parents immigrated here from their countries here. And I think that's the first thing. They just send money back home or whatever. That's kind of been the norm. So I love that you're bringing the U.S. principles, right, of wealth building and preservation to your home country, to not just send money, but like let's figure out how to make money, keep it. So that's amazing.
If if you don't mind, just to share like a practical aspect of that, because you asked how, and I don't just want to share vision here and kind of lead by example here with what I said earlier. How I'm doing it is through my work and everything that I've learned from going to family office events, studying the different books and picking different people's brains. What I'm doing is I'm taking all the same principles and structures that wealthy families have been using to approach building wealth, and I'm distilling it into something simple and practical that families, Latino families that have a less than $10 million net worth can start to use to do the same thing as those other families. And that requires two things. So two kind of structures. One, it's the structure of how they go about building their wealth. I went through a couple of them in our conversation so far. But the second part is about helping them build out their own virtual family office. So what that is, and just to make this into like a conceptual thing, I was having a conversation with somebody recently. They said that they don't get their healthcare here because they're from China. They say when they go to China, everything that they need to get done, all the tests, and even tests that are more extensive than the one here, they can have it all done in one day because everyone is in one building.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Here in the U.S., you got to go to your primary care. Your primary care is
to this person.
The labs to come in. Everything just takes this long process, and everyone's all spread out. So, or in his country, in China, if you have all these practitioners inside of one building, everyone can help you a lot quicker and in a way that's more integrated. My role is also to be that relationship manager that can integrate all the business and financial advisors, whether it's the accountant, whether it's simple things like tax advisor, business attorney, estate planning attorney, payroll people, any kind of employee that works outside of the business, helping the business work in the business. I organize those teams. I make sure that they're in communication with one another so that everyone knows that they're working in the same direction for that business owner. I think if I can effectively do that, which it shouldn't be hard because it's been done by many other families, then I think it's a better chance at helping Latino business owners grow in a more impactful and a quicker way, and then take that experience back home.
That is amazing. So you're really consolidating all the key things that they need for their business into just one person. They don't have to call Harold and then this person and that person. They just call you. One team
that is led by one person that can serve as that liaison and a specialist in a couple areas, but really as a liaison between everybody, because there's a line here. The family business is here. The specialists are here. Specialists don't know how to get together and talk to the family business because they speak a different language. It's like it's too complicated. It's their everyday talk that it's not familiar with the business owner. My job is to be a specialist in some of these areas, but really it's to take this whole conversation and then break it down into simple and practical steps that the business owner can understand and feel confident in taking.
Got it. So you're truly just bridging that gap. Wow. I love that. So we're definitely going to share how they can hear more about that. But I do have one last question. It's a surprise question from Dyer the CEO podcast. So.
What is your proudest moment? Right away, what comes to mind, I have a 2-year-old nephew, and he's my closest sister's first child.
Wow.
And when he was first born, it was my first time realizing that this is a human being that is powerless, has no idea what's going on around them, has no idea who I am, but is completely reliant on the people around them, on not just being taken care of, but on being loved. And so I had to let go of every expectation that I had of what being an uncle meant, because that doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is like, who am I showing up as so that he can be well, right? I kept on showing up as an uncle. I kept on showing up to take care of him, giving him his hugs, giving him that unconditional love that any child at that age requires and still requires, because he's only 2 years old. Yesterday for like 6 hours. But my proudest moment is when I would go for a couple of times and he wouldn't even smile at me because I'm just a silhouette. I don't know what you are. You know? pretty much, My proudest moment was when I walked in one day and he just like looked at the door like always, because like, who walked in? And he smiled. Like he looked at my eyes and he smiled. Like he recognized me. What that told me is like, Harold, you're doing such an amazing job that this being that cannot express himself with words knows at a core level and is expressing it through his smile that you've shown up enough that I can trust you. I recognize you. You're familiar to me.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. And you're like, I don't have kids, but I love my nieces and nephews. So I can relate, like having that. It's a different connection than a parent, but I could totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, thanks. That was a question. But can you just tell them more, like how they can find about you, your website, your Instagram, where they can find you?
Yeah. Website is under construction right now. You can find me on Instagram at Roots to Riches with 2 S's on the end. Shoot me a DM, ask me questions. I'm also a host of a podcast called Roots to Riches on Spotify, where I'm interviewing successful Latino businesses and investors, trying to get them to bring their insights and experience into our community. And then what else can I say? I just wish you guys all luck. I hope this was all useful.
Yes. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to click the link for the Real Estate Done Right community, and we'll see you guys next time.